activity. Now, ideas being discussed include making private school fees tax deductible while cutting taxpayer funding, lowering family tax bills by allowing couples to split incomes, and a fringe benefits review to allow workers in remote communities to pay their rent or their mortgage from pre-tax income. Newly installed South Australian Liberal Senator Leah Blyth is working with the Parliamentary Budget Office on possible models of how to make private school fees tax deductible while cutting taxpayer funding. It joins me now on Perth Live. Leah Blyth, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Oliver, and good afternoon to your listeners.
What is the proposal you're working with the Parliamentary Budget Office about tax deductible school fees?
Look, I think it's important to start with this is an idea. This is to start a conversation, and certainly I have requested some modelling from the Parliamentary Budget Office. But essentially what it is it's starting a conversation around how private schools are funded, and it's to look at how we can give parents the maximum amount of flexibility to be able to choose what kind of education system they would like to put their kids into. Because I think when you've got parents who are choosing a private education, they're paying private school fees, but they're also contributing to the public system through general taxation. So it's just having a broad conversation to have a look at how we could potentially value the decisions parents want to make, and see if we can make sure that we can give kids the best educational outcomes that they can possibly get.
So funding for schools in 2025, looking at the Department of Education's budget, is estimated to cost about $31 billion, including almost $12 billion to government schools, $10.5 billion to Catholic schools and $8.7 billion to independent schools. The work that you're doing at the moment, as you say, it is just policy in development. It's an idea. May see that amount of money to Catholic schools and independent schools from the taxpayer be cut if the parents paying those fees to those schools were able to get a tax deduction.
That's certainly one part of the modelling that can be done on that. And I think it's really important to note that, you know, it's also important when we're looking at that modelling that it is really carefully calibrated so that we're not just reallocating funds through the tax system in a way that is going to deliver higher benefit to, say, high income earners or disadvantage low-income earners. But that's certainly the idea. And then we could be looking at how we can support the public school system by taking that pressure off of the taxpayer. So it is a very sort of complex thought, but one that potentially has a well-designed framework might actually reduce pressure on our public education system, deliver savings to government, but also help with the private sector to build up their numbers there if it works that way.
So Joe's just sent in a note saying school fees tax deductible definitely for us because we have no other schooling choice. We only have a district high school near us, so a year 11 and year 12, my son has to go to school. Now, we're not rich, but we have to find the $800 a week to send him to school. So it might help people as in Joe's circumstances, he doesn't live in the metropolitan area, Leah, if such a policy was able to be developed.
Absolutely, and there are lots of parents who are in that position, and this is part of starting these conversations because I think it's fair to say, modern families work differently. If you are remote, you may only have private schooling options, or it may even be sending your kids into the city to boarding school to attend school. So this is really about, like I said, it's the flexibility for parents to be able to choose.
Any other countries you're aware of who are offering tax-deductible school fees, Leah?
There are some jurisdictions who look at, it's more of a voucher system, so where they will say, we will allocate a child, and I pick a number out. I'm not saying this is what it costs in Australia, but it might be $20,000. And you can choose how you spend that voucher, whether it's in a public system or in the private system. There's obviously a gap in the private system that then parents make up. In the public system, that's essentially then free education. So that's another way of doing it. This is, and I'm not saying that should be off the table or on the table, but it's one way that other jurisdictions are doing it.
133 882. Is this worth further exploration? Tax deductible school fees, something that may be part of a policy overhaul here of the coalition. You're also talking about allowing couples to income split to be able to cut their tax. Leah, how would that work?
So I think this is one where, again, families make different decisions. And I think with the income splitting, and I can sort of give you the example, if you've got a household where you've got one partner who earns $120,000 and another one who's earning $40,000, at the moment, we put that together and the couple are essentially earning $80,000 each. But what happens is the partner who's earning $120,000 pays tax on that. You can't aggregate it now. And the other one who's earning $40,000 pays the tax on their $40,000. What this would propose is that both would pay on the $80,000, which actually leaves that family household better off under our tax system. So it is really about leveling the playing field. There are families who make different choices. It could be, to care for children. It could be to care for loved ones with a disability or special needs. It can even be for caring for elderly or ageing parents. So families make different decisions about how they work or don't work. And this is really about, I guess, starting that conversation on how we are going to value those contributions that aren't necessarily in the workplace.
Yeah, and family structures vary, don't they? As you said before, you might even have multi-generational households, Leah, where you are a caregiver. So combining those incomes together, testing it on the fact that it's, with a couple as opposed to that income example used of 120 plus 40, it would come out that you'd have a few more dollars in your pocket to spend yourselves as a family unit rather than giving it all up into your taxes.
Exactly. And I think that's really important. It's pretty tough at the moment. Families are struggling, and I think it's important we're having conversations around how we can ease that pressure on family households. And this is certainly one way where we can make sure that it doesn't matter whether you're living, in a family environment or as a single, that everyone is being taxed at the same rate for the same thing. And
there are policies like this, I believe, in place in some European countries, even in some parts, if not all of the US, Leah?
The US does, absolutely. So the US, Italy, there are other jurisdictions that do this. And so it's something that as families have evolved and changed, the tax system has kept up. I think in this case, this is, a very worthy conversation for us to be having so that we're making sure that we're keeping up. And really valuing, I think, for me, this is very much around, our personal income tax system isn't just about raising revenue, it's sending a message about what we value. And I think as, Australians in our communities, we should value that work that, whether it's mum, dad, aunties, grandparents, those care that we take of people within our community.
So the perspective or the lens you're coming at this from at the moment, Leah, is rather than looking at as perhaps personal income tax, it's how it benefits not just the individual but the family, because family units obviously vary from household to household.
Definitely. And it is really tough. I've got 3 kids, very busy household. And it's really important, I think, that we make sure that we're allowing families to make that decision on how they want to, if you've got 2 parents earning income, that we should be doing everything we can to make sure that you keep as much of your hard-earned dollars in your pocket and that the taxman's not just coming in and taking out what they can get. Life's tough enough without that happening.
Leah, I appreciate your time, and the formulation of policy discussion begins in the rebuild of the coalition.
It does. Excellent. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Leah Blyth there, Liberal Senator from South Australia, putting up a